Hello and welcome back to the MMA India show. We have Akhilesh with us, who's still in Singapore. He's taking a slight break after UFC Singapore. And how's the weather out there? I think it's just like Mumbai, isn't it?
It was raining in the morning. I've
it's humid.
4 5 years. Yeah, it's humid.
So it's just like Mumbai, raining and humid.
Yeah, it kind of is.
Okay.
Kind of is. So it's a seesaw kind of a climate as well.
So let's just touch upon the fights first, and then we'll talk about your experience being there, for the whole UFC fight week, so to speak. First of all, of course, Rafael made an entry into welterweight by defeating Tariq Safadin by unanimous decision. It was a pretty strong performance. He never really backed down, never seemed in trouble at any time. So I would say there's another guy on the block in welterweight, just like Donald Cerrone came up.
Yeah, so the interesting thing is, even if you look at the physicalities between the two fighters, you could see if Tariq Safadin was taller, he was broader, and he had a bigger frame.
Yeah, it was much bigger.
But at the cage, it was Dos Anjos that was overpowering him. He was a stronger fighter. So I think a move up to 170, and Dos Anjos even said, I did not have to, kill myself to make weight this time around. I could still, eat properly. I could still train properly. So that was a good move on his part to move up to 170, especially at his age. So as you said, I think a move up. We have seen that with the likes of Dustin Poirier, with the likes of Donald Cerrone, as you said. Now with RDA, moving up a weight class for these fighters is probably the best decision that they've taken, especially at after what they've done in their previous weight classes.
Okay, so. But you did ask him at the post-fight conference that he did have a problem even reaching this weight. Was there some problem he had even reaching welterweight?
Yeah, so basically what he said was this was his first fight at 170, so even he was not sure how he could make weight because, if it's a lot of science that goes into weight cutting. So when you say, look, just a night before, if I have to be 7 to 10 pounds to making weight, then that's again, some kind of science that they follow where they have strict diet, strict nutrition to make 180, and then just the night before the fight they can cut 10 pounds sitting in a sauna, sitting in the swimming pools or whatever it is, and shed those 10 pounds. So it's,
I wish I could lose 10 pounds sitting in a swimming pool. I would go in a swimming pool every fucking day. Anyway.
So that's why they have their team, the doctors, the nutritionists, the dietitians following them everywhere, so that they get all of that down to the dot. So what essentially RDA said was it was his first fight at 170, so he wasn't sure how he could manage that. But now he's a better understanding of where he should be a day before the fight, or a night before the fight, or just a day before making weight.
Okay. So now moving on to Colby versus Dong, Sangan. Colby again gave a really strong performance. I mean, he wasn't able to finish off Dong, but he gave a really strong performance, and doing what Dong does to other people, of course. He just didn't give him any space really to maneuver.
It's funny because we all knew coming into this fight that Colby was going to use his wrestling to subdue Dong Hyun Kim. That's what he does in his fights. You see people like Kamaru Usman, for example, who are very strong grapplers, very strong wrestlers, subduing.
That's actually a fight I would want to see.
Because
it's Kamaru versus Colby.
Yeah, and I even asked Kamaru about that, and he said, "Look, it makes sense for me to fight someone that's in the top 10. Who is Colby Covington? No one knows him right now."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think everyone is looking at the bigger
picture. Yeah. I mean, don't you think Colby is jumping the gun a bit by calling out people like Tyrone and Steven Wonderboy?
Yes, but as I said, and he just beat a top 10 ranked fighter, and that was his first biggest fight. So it's way too early for him to fight someone like Tyrone Woodley or Stephen Thompson, and I completely agree with that. But at the same time, if you need to make some waves in the division, that's the only way that you can do it. That's the only way.
Of course, he's doing what he has to do by taking those names.
Right. So you call out the big guns, the big names, and even though they might not, be willing to take the fight, there's number 4, 5, 6 ranked fighters that would be willing to face Colby Covington now because he just beat number 7 ranked fighter in the welterweight division.
Yeah. Well, he had Jorge Masvidal in his corner as well. You know, so that always helps. Jorge is a great striker, and he showed great skills. Now, coming to Andre Arlovski versus Tybura. Now, I felt so. I mean, I shouldn't say this. Andre is such a magnificent fighter, you know, and such a legend. And I felt bad because when he had Tybura in his sights, you know, when he was, you know, I felt he could have. There was a couple of moments, you know. Of course, at the end of the first round, the round finished. But even in the second round, there were a lot of moments. Well, not lots, but there were you know at least two moments where you felt he was getting his striking going really well, and he had that opportunity to finish Tybura, but he didn't have the energy. Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Your video is stuck. I can barely hear you.
Oh,
now it's better.
Okay. So, like I was saying, you know, when he was getting his striking going, but he didn't have any energy left.
Yeah, so you know, you saw in the first round itself, Tybura. You know, it's quite interesting the way the fight even progressed, because we all knew Tybura is going to exert a lot of pressure on Andre Arlovski, not letting him settle and then try to take the fight to the ground and look for a finish. And that's exactly what he did. Coming into this fight, Tybura had 2 excellent knockouts as well. But before that, you know, his base has always been sound wrestling, sound grappling. And he did that. He did that in the first round. He took Andre down. He rained with punches. He almost stopped the fight going, I think, into the last minute. He had Andre's back. He was, you know, raining down with some really heavy strikes. And Andre turned it around to end the fight. You know, he almost stopped Tybura with his strikes. But yeah, going into the second round, we could see both Tybura and Andre gassing out. I think Tybura expended a lot of energy in the first round itself trying to finish Andre. Yeah, that's the thing with heavyweights. I mean, we have seen that with Derek Lewis last weekend, where he did not have much energy. He did not have energy at all after the third round. But yeah, you know, Andre Arlovski now losing 5 fights on a stretch. You kind of feel that this is it. This is it for Andre, and he did not look pleased even during the fight week, because there were like 4-5 days where we ran into Andre Arlovski fight, and he was not a happy camper. Maybe it was because of the weight cut, maybe it was because of the training or whatever it was. Even during the press scrums, he did not look like a person that was enjoying himself. He was under a lot of pressure, and we could see that. Yeah, and the outcome of the fight kind of like, I don't know, you know, as you said, he had an absolutely amazing career, former heavyweight champion in the UFC. But yeah, you kind of feel that this is all she wrote for Andre.
Because you felt so bad, you know, you almost felt like reaching in and pushing him to finish, because he was just there, you know, like 30-40 seconds more, and one felt he could have finished off, you know, Tybura. So that's what one felt, but he just didn't have anything in the tank, because he just kept on clinching with Tybura then, and that's not where you know, one knew that Andre should be, because if he turned around or anything, took him down, which is what happened, then it's, you know, going to be Andre trying to survive again, which is what happened.
Yeah, so basically it was Tybura trying to make sure that Andre did not create any separation, and you know, we've seen before how good Andre is when, you know, you get into boxing range with him. So Tybura essentially did not want to be in that position. We saw that exactly happening towards the end of the first round, where Andre turned the fight around and almost finished him. So it was you know, a fight that the fans, you know, just being there octagon side, I could see that the fans were not impressed with the fight. I think the main card was pretty subdued after, especially the prelims. You had some outstanding fights on the prelims card. You know, the Casillas fight, the Scoggins fight, and then the Takanori Gomi fight itself. So there were a lot of explosive fights on the prelims card, and it was excellent pacing. But once you went, you know, started with the main card, the first fight itself, you know, was pretty good. But from the second fight, it was all wrestling. You know what I mean? It was all wrestling and grappling, and the fans did not appreciate that, because they wanted to see some stand-up exchange. But yeah, it was all. I mean, Tybura, I think, had a good game plan. He essentially made sure that he did not create any separation with Andre, did not stand and trade with him, did not let Andre get inside the pockets. and essentially made sure that the fight played out either within the clinches or on the ground, where Tibura obviously had the upper hand.
Yeah. Well, now coming to the main fight, Holly Holm, Beth Correa. Now, of course, it almost played out like Tyrone Woodley, Stephen Thompson, part 2. You know, of course, you knew Holly Holm had so much banking on this fight, coming off of 3 losses, and if she lost another one, I mean, that would have been, and that to Beth Correa, that would have been a very big fall. So she was very focused. You could see that she was pepping herself up. But at the same time, she was not taking any, because I think she knew and her team knew that other fighters were now waiting for her, because they know she's a counter striker. So now they're just waiting for her to come in to them so they can counter strike against her.
Yeah, just the first 2 rounds were so I don't know. It wasn't a Holly Holm fight, because just the beginning of the first round, and I asked Holly this because we have seen in her previous fights that she's more of she's a kickboxer, so she obviously has a more side stance, and just working with Jackson Wink, that their oblique kicks are their biggest strengths to create the separation, create the range. So Holly Holm thrives with that side stance, making kicking her opponents and keeping the distance. But this time around, she was more square with Beth Correa, and someone like Beth, who is a brawler, likes going up front with her opponents and trying to brawl with them. And Holly kind of she placed herself in a position where it was more of a brawler against a brawler, rather than a side stance against a square stance where the person with the kickboxing expertise had the upper hand. So it was, and she was not ready to engage. We saw in Beth's last fight against Renault, where Beth proved that she does not have the best of offensive grappling. So that was again another chance where Holly could have exploited her weakness. There was also the opportunity for Holly to go into the clinches, because Holly up front, she was more straight on with her opponent. She was going to be not in the second. We had stepping in and asking the fighters to engage, and Mark Goddard came in and said, "Look, I appreciate what your game plan is. You have to engage."
Yeah.
So it was a very weird opening to the fight itself. Holly said it wasn't a game plan. It was just what
happened.
What I was best at the moment. And she said her explanation for the first 2 rounds were that she wanted a very crisp. She wanted a beautiful fight rather than making any mistakes, which I think is not true, because coming off those losses, her confidence took a hit. It was evident for everyone to see. So she was just waiting for the right moment, the right opening, which Beth Correa herself presented in the 3rd round. The way she dropped her hands, she taunted Holly. She dropped her hands. She did not cover herself properly. Holly saw the opening for
that was a little stupid on Beth's part. It's like, oh, this is what you want. Here, this is what you'll get.
Right. I think it was more like she invited Holly to take that shot more than anything else. And Holly obliged. If you give someone like Holly that opening where you lower your hands, you leave yourself open, she's going to lock you out, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
But again, this is a confidence booster for Holly. Even after the fight, she looked so much more relaxed than she was before.
Yeah.
So
I think this is going to make a big difference, because what's been missing so far in her last couple of fights was that mental edge.
I think so. But again, we also need to kind of understand that Beth Correa, with all due respect, is not a top 5 caliber fighter.
She's not, and which is why if she had lost to her, it would have been a very big fall. But again, sometimes you just need that win to get your mojo back.
Right, and I think this win might nudge Holly in the right direction.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, as I said, it was Beth Correa offering Holly the fight more than Holly taking it. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was a very weird fight to begin with, and a very weird way to end it. But at the end of the day, I think Holly Holm will take the W, take the paycheck, and go home, be happy for a couple of months before taking the next fight.
Yeah. Now tell us, apart from the main card, how's your week been? Of course, this is the first time This is the second time you've been in a UFC,
Third time.
Okay, third time. This is the first time MMA India show has been, in a UFC event. So how was the whole experience being there at UFC Singapore?
It was hectic. Let me be very honest. So every day, I go out at 8, come back at 1 in the night. So to all those long hours, but again, it's worth it. Singapore is a beautiful place.
We're not counting your partying hours. We're just trying to count the work hours.
No, partying hours were 6 in the morning, so that's a different.
Okay.
But yeah, Singapore is a beautiful place. And I said this before. UFC, the UFC representatives are probably the best professionals in the fight game, just because of the way they engage, just because of the way they lay everything out. So instead of going haphazardly, preparing things, they have specific timelines, specific agendas that they set out, and they're very professional in maintaining that. So I think that the past 6-7 days have been pretty good. I was at UFC 193, so that was a completely different experience. But again, here you had even someone like Jorge Masvidal coming down, Juliana Pena, you had Stephen Thompson who was here. Yeah, and you had the IMMAF things going on during the same time as well. So I think it was a pretty big way that UFC came back to Asia. They did not come here with any small card. They went all out, essentially in bringing UFC,
especially bringing their guest fighters. I think they brought some really top-notch, guest fighters, which was great. I'm sure for the Singapore fans.
Yeah, and the card was headlined by Holly Holm. You had RDM, the card, Andre Arlaus. These are big names.
Now, in the Q&A with the fighters, the guest fighters, which took place, did the fans have to pay to get in, or was it free?
No, it's free.
It's free, okay. So, and now coming to the IMMA fights, that was more or less, was it in the same area? It wasn't in the same stadium, but it was in the same area as where the UFC was taking place?
Yeah, it was in the Marina Bay Sands.
Okay.
So, essentially it was in the same vicinity where the media day went on, where everything else went on, but it was like just 1 block away. So, essentially it was in the same vicinity.
Okay. Now, there were 3 fighters who were supposed to fight from India, but I think only 2 fought.
I think 3 fought.
I didn't see the third name. I only saw 2 names which fought.
So, 2 fighters fought, I think, on the 15th, if I'm not wrong. Then, or maybe 3 fought on the 15th. I remember 2 names, as you said.
That's what I'm saying.
3 fighters.
I only remember there was a Vishal Bhardwaj, and there was Siddiq bin Mahmood. These are the only 2 names who I saw in the results. But there was supposed to be a 3rd fighter who...
Yeah, so there was supposed to be 3. So the thing is, I wanted to cover the IMMAF championships, but they were happening at the same time as the media day, as the UFC events that were taking place. And
yeah, there was another guy called Vikram, who's a featherweight from Karnataka, who was supposed to have fought, but I'm not sure if he did or not.
Yeah, they were supposed to happen from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., but for some reason every day it was just from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., so I did not have the opportunity to go and cover those fights as well. But yeah, I think it was just 2 fighters. I even saw 2 fighters fight.
Now, one thing I would like to find out, from IMMAF is, like we saw both the Indian fighters who fought lost in their very first, fights in the first rounds. But one of them, Vishal Bhardwaj, was still awarded a bronze medal. I think that's because the person who beat him eventually won.
I think so, yeah.
So I think it's like a lucky loser kind of thing. But what do you think about being given a medal? And I think the press release of IMMAF, did it say it won, that they won? Because
it said the medals, so it was country-wise. The number of medals.
And then the medals. Okay. So
and the fighter that won the medal.
Yeah. Now, the thing is, do you think that's the right thing to do? And it is now, of course, that we are MMA websites such as ourselves, reporting a lot more intricately about what's going on. So people cannot, in the past, people have won. I'm using the word won, though, they have been given medals in the same way for lack of competition. And they have come back and claimed to have won these medals. Now, is this this is not how we're going to take Indian MMA forward, because as you've seen, the UFC themselves at the post-fight conference, and, they've spoken to you also, that they have not seen, good enough competition yet to come down. There is, of course, some very good Indian fighters who have been training abroad. Of course, things are a little more complicated in our country as to which fighters get chosen and go. We don't need to talk about that right now, but we all know sometimes that there's no trials actually. There's no, there might not be any rankings on the basis of which, the fighters go. Is it really, is the IMMAF doing the right thing by giving medals just for participation? Or, because is it not demeaning the medals? And I'm saying, see, they're doing a great job by putting it together, and organizing and bringing up amateur IMMAF. But is that the right way of encouraging somebody, giving them a medal when they've lost? That is my question. Is that the right way?
I think the intention was every country that participated got a medal.
Yeah, but that is my whole point. Which basically means that there's so much space that you and me could go and participate, and in 10 seconds I could put my hands up or tap, and I would be given a medal. Is that, I personally don't see how that is helping.
It's not. There's no way you can sugarcoat it. As you said, I even talked to Sean Shelby briefly for, just to understand where they are in terms of the Indian market, their interest in scouting Indian talent. And Sean Shelby was pretty, open about it. He said, look, we do not see any fighters in India, at least at this point, that we think can compete in the UFC. Obviously, there were a couple of names, that went to the fighter development program, but, Sean Shelby said, that just wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
So there's no point in sugarcoating anything when it comes to Indian MMA. I think we need to be brutally honest in assessing the talent that we have, in assessing how we can go forward from here.
I'll be very frank. I don't think we lack talent. That is the problem. I don't think we lack talent. I think we do have the talent, but the right talent is not coming forward.
That's the thing. So I said the same thing to Sean. I said, look, there are fighters, but just because there are certain fighters that are much more closer to individuals, they get the opportunities. And Sean said, yeah, he knows, where we are coming from. He has obviously seen this happening in different countries as well.
Yeah.
He said, my email is always there for everyone. And that's when he said, I don't work with managers. I don't work with anybody else. I directly work with the fighters. There is a reason why fighters have managers. But at the same time, if they're not doing their jobs, what's the point in having them in the first place? Yeah. And that's the trouble with India. In India, the sport is so niche, the sport is so young, that there are individuals that crop up and say, oh, look, I know people from UFC. Well, Sean Shelby said, look, we do not care about any individual from India. We do not care about managers from India. We care about the fighters from India. So that's the thing. If we can put that forward to the Indian talent, then that would give them the opportunity to at least get in touch with the UFC, send them their videos if they think they're good enough. So there are always these opportunities where you can directly get in touch with the organizations. You don't have to depend on individuals.
Yeah.
But that's the thing we need to convey to the fighters in India. We have again, I cannot be brutally honest and take names. I cannot be brutally honest and be open about what people have done before. But that is going to be a persistent problem unless the fighters kind of smarten up and understand where the value is. Unless these people, kind of realize what the value is, nothing's going to change in India.
Yeah. There's that famous line from Shakespeare, something's rotten in the state of Denmark. So, having said that, I think, but it is up to all of us, and we've said this in the past, to continuously bring the the spotlight on Indian MMA, on good fighters who should get a chance to get ahead and to fight, not just because they're close to somebody, and also to make sure that people are not coming back and being garlanded for getting a medal which they didn't actually win.
But that's going to happen.
Well, that's up for us. That's up to us to call it out.
Yeah, it is. I as I said, I'm not going to condone any of these actions. While I understand why IMMAF did what it did, why it continues to do what it does, and I've tried to get in touch with these individuals, these representatives. But as long as there are individuals that they're working with who kind of want things to be sugar-coated, it's not going to work. But at the same time, what Joka said kind of hinders our progress in a way, because, and again, I understand where UFC is coming from, and they're completely, true. Joe said, and this was a talk that I had with him 2 years ago, and he said 2017 is probably the time where we actually can come to India. But then when I asked him during the press conference, he said India is still 3 years away, to be very honest.
Yeah, I heard that. And,
which is,
yeah. Because he did say, see, we need the talent pool, because you need local talent on the cards. But right. That local talent needs to be good enough to fight, the people on the UFC roster right now.
See, I think the thing is, the people that are trying to promote MMA in India need to be a little more egotistical about themselves and try to embrace the sport. We have seen people saying, oh, we do it for the love of the sport, which is utter BS. And we all know that.
Yeah.
Right? I think it is time for these individuals.
I think the problem is that a lot of individuals are not in it for the sport.
That's the point. That's the thing. And they say we are, which is not true. So I think it is time that we work together to build the sport, rather than one person trying to do one thing, the other person trying to do an entirely different thing for themselves, not for the fighters. I can give you instances where these people try to con the fighters. We all know that.
Yeah.
The thing is, no one is willing to say it.
Yeah.
So I think Joe's words should be a wake-up call for all of us.
Yeah, though I don't think I think a lot of people have very thick skin, and it won't be, because they prefer to operate in their cocoons, where they can get away with a lot of stuff, which once things become very transparent, which we have been trying to do and we will continue to do, they will not be able to operate the same way. And I can say this with a lot of confidence, that since we have come on the scene, people know that somebody's watching. A website with integrity, who is not afraid to call out, when things are wrong, and we will continue to do so, because that is the only way Indian MMA will progress. It's not about criticizing Indian MMA; it's about being realistic, and getting the best people forward. We're not saying Indian MMA should not, we are saying, when you are sending somebody abroad, on what basis have you chosen them to represent the country and send them?
This is what I think we need to do. I think we need to get all these individuals in one room.
Yeah.
And we have to say, look, enough is enough of this bullshit. If you really want the sport to progress,
yeah,
it's better to work together rather than trying to con the fighters.
But we won't say that when we put them together in the room. But yeah.
But that should be the essence, because. And let's be honest, these individuals know who they are. If they're kind of, turning in their seats right now, it's them. So, again, this is nothing against an individual. This is something that we need to do to promote the sport in India. As I said, Joka's words need to be taken very seriously. If we kind of turn the other cheek, how many fighters do we know who have said, I want to get into the UFC? You don't have a chance to get into the UFC. Let's be very honest. Unless these people, the people that we are talking about, get their act together, no one has a chance to get into the UFC.
Yeah.
So I think even if you're a fighter who wants to make it the big stage, you need to talk to your managers, you need to talk to your management teams, whoever is representing you, and tell them that enough is enough. We need to work together for the betterment of the sport.
I think the problem is everybody wants to be known as the maker and the do-all of Indian MMA in the country, rather than, you know, like we said, coming together and working to promote the sport. You know,
see, I think this is, I think, what it is. Everyone wants to be a Malki Kawa in India. Everyone wants to be that big promoter, that big manager in India. But let's be honest, who is the biggest fighter in India? One random website that probably gets 10 hits a day comes in and says he's the biggest fighter in India. That doesn't make him the biggest fighter, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If that's the thing, you need to promote yourself, but at the same time, you need to promote the sport. If you're not promoting the sport, what good is it promoting yourself?
Yeah.
That's the basic logic. Unless you build a foundation, you cannot build castles in the air. You need to build a proper foundation for that.
Yeah. And I think there are some people who are trying. I don't want to take any names right now and, you know, separate people or anything. There are some people who are trying, of course, on a smaller level. People are trying to be, but you know, there's just so many different divisions. There's like 4 different associations, federations, you know, so
and I see, that's the thing. I know people from, say, 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu. One person who works with Eddie Bravo that I met here, who said, dude, I love to come to India. I'll do it for free.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You know, just arrange for my flight and accommodation. I'll come there. I'll do seminars for free. I'll work there for a week. I'll do it for free for the Indian fighters. Now, if you cannot take those offers up, someone from 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu wants to teach Jiu-Jitsu in India. If you cannot take that offer up, there are fighters from the UFC that are saying, I want to come to India.
Yeah.
You know, so unless you put your ego aside and unless you work for the betterment of the sport, you will not do anything. The sport will not do anything. Let's be very honest about that.
Well, you know, I think they want to make everybody feel that there is something happening because there are these fights happening, and you know, there are, but it's not happening. You know, just by saying that we're behind everybody. No, I don't think it'll take very much time to catch up. It's just a matter of having the will to come together and do it.
The thing is, if it's a new market, it will take time for people to come together. But in India, MMA is not new. MMA is niche, yeah, sure, but it's not new. You know, it has been happening for 10 years.
Yeah.
But what have people done after that? Nothing. You know, as you said, there are different individuals trying to do different things, but on a very small scale. The sport will not progress if that's the case. You know, so I think the primary thing that we have to do is merge or bring people from different federations and associations together and lay a proper framework. Something that will not exploit the fighters, something that will work for the betterment of the sport, something that will not get behind one specific promotion and then be a problem for every other promotion that tries to come to India. So I think a proper framework is what is needed. And I know apart from that, as I said previously, we need people that work for the betterment of the sport and the fighters, not managers that try to exploit the fighters.
Yeah.
You know, so unless we get all of these people together and we kind of reach an understanding, I don't see anything happening going forward for the next 5 years.
Yeah. Well, we will try our best and we will keep all of you updated. Till then, Akhilesh, enjoy the rest of your time in Singapore and we shall see you soon. Take care.
Yeah, thank you.
Have fun.